As far as the big assignment, I'll warn you now, this is a bigger assignment. It's the grant proposal. We're leading up to our last module now, so we are ready to do a little bit more writing, a little bit more research. So in this assignment, you are going to pretend that you're a teacher. You're writing a grant to bring in new technology to your classroom, your department, your school, whatever the case. The place that you're working with is entirely up to you, but it should be very clear in your presentation who you're making all these purchases for and what grade levels and subject areas that are going to benefit from it. The Indiana Department of Education has a great deal of helpful information about all the schools, except for some private schools. So we will be able to see what your chosen school needs as far as things like I-STEP scores, graduation rates, special needs, free and reduced lunch, all kinds of different markers and of data points. So we'll look at that. I'll show you what that site looks like in a minute. Once you know your school and its areas of need, you're going to create a proposal. So you'll need to be professional and you'll need to prepare a budget to show that you're smart with your money. And you also want to make sure you try and spend every dollar. That's part of the grant process. So first, you're going to do some research, come up with a spreadsheet that keeps track of all your purchases, what they are, where they came from, how much they cost. Please use the spreadsheets tools. There are points dedicated to this, so use the spreadsheets tools. You learned about those in Module 2, about how to add and multiply and all that good stuff. Don't use a calculator. Use a spreadsheet for its intended purpose, please. Once you have some ideas and you've gone shopping, then you can consider the ISTE standards. That's the International Society for Technology and Education, and it's a really important organization that you might have heard of before. And it puts forward the standards for technology integration for all students, teachers, and administrators. So it's an international group. For all purposes, we're going to explore the standards for students rather than for teachers. Unless you're designing something that only teachers will use, stick with the one for students, and you'll see how our proposed solution, that your proposed solution matches up with the standards and what standards you'll actually be addressing. I'll show you those as well. When it comes to setting up your PowerPoint slides, Prezi, Google Doc, whatever it is that you use, you'll want to present both what you're buying and why you think it's important purchase. You can use whatever resources you have on hand, including, the articles I've listed in the module, textbooks, articles that you find online, whatever it could be to help you make your case. Remember that you're presenting, right? You're actually going to present this just to me, but you pretend like you're presenting to a principal or the school board or superintendent. So keep the look of your presentation and your animations and images and things like that fairly professional. Some of the super cute things that you can do with presentations probably won't be great choices for this kind of thing. So try to avoid that and stick with things that make you look a little bit more polished. Also remember to use whatever tool works best for you. I won't tell you just to use PowerPoint, although a lot of people use that. Some people love Prezi, some people love Google Slides, some people love eMaze. There's a lot of choices out there, so pick whatever you'd like. Finally, you're going to record a 5 to 10 minute presentation with either Screencast-O-Matic or Screencastify, and you might depend on your computer which one you use. They're both great sites that let you record screencasts from your computer microphone. You can have your webcam on or not. You don't have to be on camera if you don't wish to. And so this is one of those times when the camera won't need to be on too. And then you'll record yourself giving your presentation to your school board, your principal, or whatever. So then when you turn all this in, you're going to give me your link to your presentation, your PowerPoint or your Prezi or whatever you use, and your spreadsheet. So screencasting, you've seen me do it all semester, and it's just not that hard. It's actually super easy. All you really need is a microphone. It's just going to record everything that it's seeing, and then you narrate over it. So with Screencast-O-Matic or Screencastify, it's really your choice. Screencast-O-Matic and Screencastify both work within your browser. You don't really need to do much. You download like a little extension, and that's it. Chrome users, if you happen to like Chrome like I do, and I will show you that one, Screencastify is really pretty nice. Its only downside is that it's 10 minutes. It limits you at 10 minutes unless you pay them, which I don't recommend you do that. But 10 minutes can be a little bit of a tight limit for some of us. Screencast-O-Matic is 15 minutes, which is a little bit more breathing room. So, it's up to you which one you choose, but you may want to experiment a little with that. If you don't like Chrome or don't use Chrome, then Screencast-O-Matic is going to be your best option. There are other tools that do this as well, but they usually limit you to much shorter times. And since we need that at least 5 to 10 minute period in there, then these are two of the better tools. So when you've done your recording, you're just going to bring up your slides. You're going to start presenting just like as if you were in front of us in class. Some people like to have notes. Some people like to use a script and just read from the script. That's perfectly fine. Just focus on the key points of your proposal. Try not to spend more than 10 minutes, but if you have to go over a little bit, you certainly can. Some people like to talk, not a bad thing. Be sure to publish your video then. You'll be able to publish it with YouTube. Screencast-O-Matic has its own little publishing service, which prevents you from having to go off to YouTube to do something which some people don't wish to do. Screencastify will send it to your Google Drive, so then you can just send me a link straight to your Google Drive if you want to do it that way. So be sure to publish it, and then when you send me that stuff in Blackboard, you're going to send me your link and your slides and your Excel spreadsheet. So don't forget that part. Some things to remember. Your grant proposal should really be driven by real student data. We'll take a look at that site. You'll find a district or building to work with to evaluate the data that that they have available. Ask yourself things like, is there a downward trend in ISTEP scores on a particular subject? Or is there a problem with graduation rates? What's the free and reduced lunch rate? Special needs? Any specific disciplines in ISTEP? Can you compare math and science and see a big difference between them, for example? All these items can help you decide what would benefit the students in your school the most. So the data is going to drive where you go with your proposal. Also, when you take a look at the ISTE standards, ask how your ideas align. Sometimes you'll find that they kind of align with all of the standards, and that's okay. But what sorts of areas do you feel like you can address with this grant proposal? Consider not just obvious stuff like teaching students how to use the technology. Obviously, this is important, but it's not about getting it into their hands so they can gain technical skills here. We want to teach them how to use the technology as a tool for learning to their benefit so that they can collaborate, communicate, research, create, solve problems. So these are the sorts of things that the standards cover. Very little of it is about how to use a mouse or how to point to things on a screen. So just keep that in mind. The 2-page ISTE standards document is linked in our course, so you can look through that, and I'll tell you a lot about what we're going for here. This is a really fun assignment, I promise. It's longer than some of them, but it is fun to be creative, to go shopping, to explore all the options that are out there. You may find out about a lot of technologies that you didn't even know. Don't forget to always consider how your purchases will directly influence student learning. So don't just buy stuff to buy stuff. You don't just buy a bunch of computers. You know, you might wind up buying only smartboards so that the school can benefit from having this more interactive tool available to get students out of their seats and engaging them. You might buy handheld devices and store them up with a bunch of apps. It might even be a school that you know already has devices available to students, so then your job is to then find things to add to them, because by themselves they can only do so much, but once you start adding apps to them, that opens up a whole world. Things like subscription services to things like Brain Pop or even Screencastify. All these different tools are out there, and most of them have some sort of either a single-use fee or a yearly fee. And so including that kind of thing in your budget would be a great idea. And most of this stuff is going to be available on the web, all this cool stuff. You just have to sometimes do a little digging. And if you're having trouble finding pricing or that kind of thing, let me know. I might be able to help you with that. So as I mentioned before, I also can't stress enough how we're going to use a spreadsheet tool again. So if you didn't get along with Excel or Google Sheets before, this is another chance to get your revenge. It's really not so bad. I'm not even asking you to do that much, except use it to add up your grand totals and do your multiplication of your price by your quantity. So two real simple tools, and I will show you what those look like in a minute in case you need a refresher. Just don't resort to a calculator, because I do look at the formulas, and you'll lose points if you do that. So we don't want you to do that. Places to go for help. Tons of different places out there. Lots of articles, lots of things available in our course to take a look at, maybe even an overwhelming amount. Just take what you need and leave the rest. Something doesn't sound interesting, don't use it, obviously, but have some fun with it. You'll have to dig a little bit. This project will take longer than some of your other projects have. You will not be able to spin this out in a day. Give this some time to sink in and do it a proper job, because the screencasting part itself can take you a little extra time if you say have trouble with extra noise in the background or something goes wrong. You never know. Do not wait until 11:30 at night on Sunday to do your recording. You will be very, very unhappy if things don't go well. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Blackboard now. So we're here in Blackboard, and I'll check out Module 4, briefly showing you where the discussion information is for the Flipgrid on SAMR. This one's pretty straightforward, so you can read through it. There's a whole bunch of resources and articles and things you can look at to help you learn more about it. The big thing is that we're trying to come up with tools and resources and things that go with our lessons in different kinds of ways. So it's a model for figuring out how to take advantage of technology to make the learning more impactful, more transformative, more interesting. So this is kind of a fun one to do, as I said before. So take your time, look through that stuff during that week that we're doing the discussion. So in the assignments then, you'll learn about the grant proposal. This one has a lot of detail to provide you with all the information you could possibly need to know about accomplishing this task, which is a little bigger than some of the tasks we've done before. Like I said, this one's going to take you more time. So give it the time that it needs. Plan out a little extra time this week to work on this project. Your first step is going to be gathering up your research, looking at the standards and the IDOE website. So here's the link for that. The IDOE Compass, they call it. And this contains all the school data for all the schools in our state, including if you want to work with a non-public school, parochial school, or charter school research, your data usually is here, but not for all the schools. So some of the parochial schools do not report their information in the same way. So that won't necessarily come up, or you won't get that much info from Compass. But if you're working with a school like the Hammond Academy, for example, which is a public charter school, they have to present all of the same data that any other public school presents, which means you'll find plenty of information about them. And in fact, since I'm thinking about them, let's check out their data. So let's say I want to work with the Hammond Academy, which is actually a school where I used to do some teaching. So it's a great school if you've not been able to visit it. Hopefully we'll get a chance this semester if you want to come out and get one of those workshops. For participation, you'd want to come out and see that school because it's pretty awesome. So it's in downtown Hammond, right near the state line, and there are 536 students. You can see that it's extremely diverse. There's a whole lot of mix of students here. There is a fairly evenly split between free and paid meals. So if you don't know what free and reduced lunch means, it basically shows the socioeconomics of the community. So here, remember, they draw students from all over, not just Hammond, so they may not reflect the socioeconomics of other schools in Hammond. We'll look at another one just as an example, but you can see that there's quite a number of students who receive reduced price meals or free meals, which means their government is subsidizing some of that price for them. You can also see their I-STEP scores, and you can see where they're going. Now, this is a high school, so you see things a little differently. I'll show you an elementary school in a minute, but this is a high school, so you'll be able to see their ECAs as well as I-STEP scores in all the different areas where they've taken those tests and have adequate information. So they've been going for 6 years now, so they have enough data you can explore a little ways back. So you can see, let's stick with I-STEP. You can see that they're doing okay, a little below the Indiana state average on the English and math combined. If we look at English language arts, you can see that's a bit higher, still a little bit below. However, last year, or actually 2015, they actually were a little higher than the state average, and now they've dipped below, but it actually looks like a lot of kids dip below because you can kind of see that the trend is slightly less, close, but just slightly. It's holding, but now HAST has dipped a little bit below that, whereas before they were above. So English might be a place to look as far as helping this school. You can also look at the math, and you can see that the math is suffering just a slight bit more. Science is actually holding pretty good. Given that it is a science and technology focused school, that shouldn't be a big surprise, but it's holding really well. And then the social studies test, which hasn't been out that long, but they're acing that. They're actually doing really well. So their areas for help could be math and science, or math and English, I mean. So either or both of those things could be places to look when you're looking for apps and resources. Now, I know because I've worked there that this is a school that has one-to-one technology. Every kid has an iPad in the school, so buying them more iPads won't really help them, but buying them apps or subscription services to cool things, updating other equipment in classrooms could be a great thing for them. So these are some of the things that you want to think about when you're doing this research. Now let's look, just for fun, let's look at an elementary school in Hammond, just to compare the difference, in case you're not familiar with the community, to see, now we see all the ethnic diversity, but we see a large percentage of paid meals here. So, and free meals. So you see more of an even split between those things. So let's look at Lafayette Elementary School, which isn't that far actually from HAST. I think this is going to be the right Lafayette. That's one of the problems. Sometimes, there we go. So I know a few people that work at this school, and you can see now how much more of the free meals are here in this school, which is right down the street from Haas. But you know, there's a different group of kids that might be coming to this school. So you can see that the socioeconomics here yield more students that need to have their meals subsidized, and very few paid meals where the students are paying the cost. But you can also see that the ethnicity makeup is still very diverse, but different makeup. You noticed on the last one that there was a big purple, which is your Hispanic group. In this case, there's a lot more African American students here. So interesting just to see the mixes. In some of these schools where there's a lot of diversity, or in schools where there's not that much diversity, it can be interesting to focus on cultural differences, or students with who are learning a second language, English as a second language. Those are areas. You don't just have to stick to academic subjects with this project. If you want to create a cultural center to help kids understand where everybody's coming from, or learn languages, or learn English better, then maybe that's just the area that they need, or just the boost that that school needs. In this case, maybe that's a great place to go. Or you might go straight to iSteps and see that they are struggling a little bit. You have a corporation average, but they're actually above the corporation average, so that means that they're above the average of all the other elementary schools in Hammond, which could show that they are trying to improve things. However, there's also a downward trend. You can see from 2014 to 2016, 17, there's been kind of a steady downward trend. Some of this has to do with the actual test itself, which is a whole different subject that we won't need to talk about here. But some of these data, don't just look at this and go, oh, it's a terrible school, because it's not all the school. There are some other things to think about there. But you can also go to things like enrollment and attendance too, because that'll show you more information about the school, like who's actually there, what the grade, the number of students in every grade looks like. You can actually see that between 2013 and now, they've steadily been decreasing the number of students that they have, at least in kindergarten. You can see there seems to be fewer students coming in. So now, between 2013, where they had 102 new kindergartners, now they have only 72 new kindergartners. So there's a difference, which might show you that maybe people are moving out of the area, or at least moving out of the school zone and moving into a different school zone. So that's something that's potentially of interest that you might try to address. You can also address things like how many English language learners there are. In this case, there actually aren't that many. There's a fair amount, 12.6%, but not a huge number. They also have about the same amount of percent of special education students. Either of these areas would still be perfectly viable places to go. So you can look at some of that stuff. You can also look at things like attendance, and you can see whether attendance is going up or down. You can see that actually attendance is going up just slightly, or at least the trending is not a bad trend. Especially in your kindergartners, you're seeing that that's gone up actually quite a bit. So even though they have fewer kindergartners, more of them are coming to school every day. So that kind of, all of this stuff is interesting data, and you can get really in depth in all this kind of stuff as you explore a school. So, let's say you're going the other direction, and you're going to look at Washington Township. And this is a district. So now I'm looking at Washington Township, the district, and this is actually the wrong Washington Township, isn't it? Oh, because it's East Porter now. That's right. I always miss that. It's East Porter County now. So here's East Porter County School Corporation, which now includes many more schools than it used to. So you've got Couts, Morgan, and Washington all represented. So if you were interested in learning more about Diana's school, Diana, you might have met her in her participation guest speaker, then you might look at her high school. or middle school. They have everything combined. It's a very small school. So as opposed to, an urban area, this is a very rural area, a little bit different. You can see that now there's a lot less diversity. So one of the things Diana might tell you is that, yeah, we have a little bit less diversity, but more are coming in all the time. That the population is shifting, as they all are. And so maybe one of the things that they would really benefit from would be a cultural center of some kind. You can also see that there's many more paid meals here. Obviously, Valparaiso is a little bit of a different community than Hammond, and that's reflected in those data. But you can look at their I-STEP scores. Now remember, Hammond Academy, now, are they above the average? Yes, they are. Are they hugely above the average? No. In fact, the corporation average is quite a bit higher in some cases than this school. So compared to Couts and Morgan, Washington Township doesn't have as many kids doing that well on I-STEP combined. And then you can kind of go from there. Or you can compare ECAs and see where their ECAs is at. Actually, ECAs look at how the trending has gone with the ECAs. So they've gone up every single year on the English and algebra combined, which is pretty cool. But if you look at biology, that's significantly lower. Is it better than the state average? Yes, but it's still quite a bit lower. Could it be better? Maybe. Maybe science is an area that they would want some help in. Attendance, same thing. You can look at that, see that things are kind of holding steady for the most part. But there's some small downward trends in some areas. So you're starting to get the idea, hopefully, of how to look at the data and make your own conclusions about what it is that you want to focus on for your grant. Then when you look at the ISTE standards, you can start applying those ideas to what you're seeing in your different ideas as well. And this site will take you to the whole ISTE standards list. There are a few indicators per standard, not many, and you can kind of look at them and see where you're at. Are you focusing on digital citizenship? There's a whole section for that. Are you trying to get students to do more innovation or creative thinking? Are you trying to integrate some more math and science? Computational thinking comes into play there, and what that's all about. So all of these standards are pretty easy to understand, and if you don't quite know what these things mean as they're talking about them, these different words, you can hover over them and it'll explain what they're talking about. So apply some of your ISTE standards, do your best. It's not the easiest thing in the world to just connect, standards in this way to big ideas like writing this grant project, but I think you'll do okay. And so, just do your best with it. If you have questions, let me know. Now that you've done a little research, you can start to do some shopping. Here's some suggestions, but you can certainly go all kinds of different places. If you are buying things like smart boards or any kind of board type device, document cameras, those kinds of things, Touchboards is a really great site because they actually give you pricing. Whereas when you go to Smart Tech or if you go to Promethean or some of these other places, they don't always share with you their actual prices. You have to call them or something because they'll give you deals on things. That's real life. In our fake life here, we're making up a pretend situation. We'll just go to Touchboards and get their price. You don't call companies unless you absolutely want to know more about a product. Typically, they don't want to hear you saying, I'm doing research for a school project. They'd rather sell you something. So once you've got some stuff, then you are going to put that into a spreadsheet. Remember, so this should look familiar. I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see it easier. And you don't have to do anything fancy here unless you'd like to. Basically, we want to know things like the product. You can add any notes there that you want to, but we need to know how many you're buying, what it costs, and the total price. Right? So each line should more or less have this information. So you can obviously get more fancy with this, but I'm just going to do an example here. So let's say I'm buying iPads. Oh, and don't forget to tell us where it comes from too. So in this case, it's Apple. right? So you could paste links in there, do whatever you need to do. But let's say I'm buying iPads for a school that doesn't already use them, or maybe they use Chromebooks or something, and we'd like to give them an alternative device. So we're going to buy, I don't know, 20 iPads. Remember, you've only got $30,000, which sounds like a ton of money. It goes extremely quickly. Leave yourself some room for things like bigger equipment, things like apps. Remember, if you're going to buy an app, you're going to buy one for all the devices. So if you buy 75,000 devices and eat up all your money, you won't have any room for apps in your budget, and the iPads, while interesting on the web, won't be able to do a whole lot more. Yes, there's lots of free apps, but there's a lot of crappy free apps. I hate to be blunt, but there's just a lot of bad ones out there. You get what you pay for in the app world. And so there are many apps that are out there that are fantabulous and are not free. So you'll want to keep your budget open, keep your eyes open for some things that are valuable to your students. And so I'm going to say that these are $3.99 because I believe that's what they run. And so at this point now I can use my spreadsheet tools. If you remember, you do the equal sign to start a formula, right? This is not an auto magic because you're multiplying, but it's still a simple formula. Just like when you used this to do your percentage, same thing. Multiply that by that. So in my case, B2 times C2, use the asterisk to do your multiplication, and it comes up with the price. So that way, if I decide I have enough room in my budget for 25 iPads, it will automatically recalculate, and there's no muss, no fuss. So, okay, now I have 25 iPads. Another example, maybe I found a great app. There's one out there called Little Fox. It's a wonderful storybook app. And if you use the one-time purchase feature and buy all the stories at one time, it saves you money rather than buying each one individually as in-app purchases. So Little Fox costs, I believe now, I could be wrong, but I believe it was $12.99. No, I think it was $19.99. So this is a more expensive app, but it's worth it. You don't have to buy all the extra stories individually, which then winds up costing a lot more. So I need 25 of those at $19.99 because I need one app for each iPad. You can't just put your one app on all the iPads all at once. You might do that at home, but schools get audited, so you can't do that kind of thing. You have to play by the rules. So that means we're going to be able to do the same thing. This is an autofill formula, which is pretty cool. Autofill it down, and it will make your calculation for you. So now if you decide, I found out, I looked it up online and, they lowered the price or they have a special and it's actually $13.99. I can change it so that and it is rounding, by the way. It's not just doing it wrong. It's rounding up for you. But you can see now it's recalculated. So use the spreadsheet tools, please. It's so valuable as a tool. If you can use it to your advantage, it's a really, really awesome calculator. So it's much better than the little calculator on your phone, I promise you. So that's the spreadsheet. Then you're going to put together your presentation. And I don't need to show you how to use PowerPoint. I think you're probably very good at that. So I'm not going to show you how to use PowerPoint. What I am going to show you is Screencastify, which is a Chrome extension. You can go to screencastify.com and add the Chrome extension. And what you see then is a little arrow in your browser. I am using Chrome here. So if you're not using Chrome, I'll show you Screencast-O-Matic as well. But Screencastify gives you the little arrow, and then anytime you want to record something, you just hit the little arrow, and it will help you set up all your stuff. Of course, I'm not signed in, and I'm already recording something, but it's literally this simple. Once you set it up, and it does have a login that you'd sign up for, and then you can go ahead and record. It records everything that's happening on your screen. You can even draw with it if you'd like to draw diagrams and things while you're talking. You can certainly do that, and then it will automatically, when you're done, it will automatically send it to your Google Drive. So it comes to be a pretty useful thing because you won't have to worry about waiting for it to send a file, upload a file, do anything like that. So for example, your video, the orientation video that you saw at the beginning of this class was done in Screencastify. So there's my Screencastify videos there. So it automatically creates a folder and drops them in there. So then these now can be shared same way you'd share anything else. You know, click on it to get the shareable link, and then that link goes along with your presentation. So you can certainly use that. It's an awesome tool. Screencast-O-Matic is another one that, again, it lets you record up to 15 minutes. Screencastify is only 10 minutes, so if you tend to talk a little bit, Screencast-O-Matic might be a better choice. You do not have to log in unless you want to publish to their service. If you just want to start recording and publish it to YouTube later, then you don't actually have to log in at all, which is kind of a cool thing. It does work on most devices. I haven't had too many problems with it myself. You can just launch the thing. It'll ask you some things about, you know, can I do this? And you'll say, okay. It will initially also ask you to download something, just like Screencastify will, a little dealio. And then you would add that thing to your computer so that it will open up the app, and if everything's working correctly, Screencast-O-Matic should open up. And then you'll see that it's a very similar process to Screencastify. You can, my computer's a little slow today, but you can kind of see that it is now basically, it'll give you this recording frame, and my buttons are going to be slightly off until I move it. You can move the box around a little bit. There we go. So now you can see that you get a bounding box that you can then manipulate if you need to make it bigger or smaller or do whatever you want to do. You can do that. It tells you what your max time is. If you're recording the screen, webcam, or both, more likely you'll just do the screen. But you don't have to. You can put your webcam on and do both. But we do want to see your slides while you're presenting, so it's really better when you use the screen or both. But if you just do webcam only, then we're just looking at you talk, which winds up not being that interesting, unfortunately. As interesting as you all are, you know what I mean? So then when you're ready, actually you can't see this because it's still too low, you will see then here at the bottom, it'll be down in that left-hand corner. When you hit record, it'll start recording. It'll count you down. Screencastify does the same thing. It'll count you down, and now it's recording. So it's actually recording everything. I'm doing sort of a meta thing. I'm doing a screencast within a screencast, which is very meta. But here I am doing that. It's going to record everything I do, anything that's on the screen, my mouse movement, so forth. And then if I choose to stop it, then I get the option to keep going. I can pause and take a breath and start again, which Screencastify also lets you do. I can trash it and start over again if something went horribly wrong and I need to fix it. Or you can hit done. And when you hit done, you'll get a quick view of your recording so that you can go back over it. You can see whether or not it actually recorded your audio and that kind of thing if you're having problems. And then you get that choice of what to do with it. So when you upload it to YouTube, you have to be logged into YouTube, obviously, but then you can send it up there. You get a simple link. YouTube's a great place to put things, and you can make them unlisted. If you make it private, nobody can see it. So if you really don't want it out there for the whole world, uploading to Screencast-O-Matic is a great idea because it really can't be searched. There's no gallery-related videos or anything like that. It's really just for the purposes of hosting these. So that's all it does. So, and the links are simple, easy to share. If you upload to YouTube, obviously you have to decide whether you want it to be unlisted or public. Again, don't make it private because nobody sees it. Unlisted means that only people with the link, which would be you and me, will have it. So if you're going to do YouTube, just remember that. YouTube does do closed captioning, which is kind of cool, and you'll see that that's what I use. You've seen that that I use that during the semester, and that's why I use YouTube and make them public, is because not only do I like to educate people, but it does the closed captioning. So if you don't want this, you can just cancel and delete it and just go on your way. So that is, those are the main points of the assignment, all the technical stuff. Obviously, read through it more carefully so you know all what's going on. Spend your time with it. Again, this could take you a little while. Ultimately, that presentation won't be more than 5 to 10 minutes, but it'll take a while to get there. So, and you might wind up recording more than once to get it the way you want it to. So don't think necessarily one and done. You can't believe how much time I spend doing these recordings and making them for you. So I won't even begin to try and point out how much time I spend on this, but it is certainly worth my time because then you have the advantage of seeing it. But it also doesn't take me just 10 minutes to record a 10-minute video. So with that said, there are some great examples of farmer students that have posted really awesome things. So you've got kind of a nice assortment of stuff to look at, including some nice videos. So there'll be either links in the PowerPoint, or there'll be videos shown here. So I won't show them to you here in the video because you can watch them on your own, but they'll give you examples of what a finished product looks like, and how the person sounds and what they're doing. All of these guys had some manner of notes or script when they were doing their project, their recording. So I highly recommend that if you're nervous about doing this. Hopefully you're a little desensitized to making videos now that we've done so many of them this semester, but if you're still nervous, script is a wonderful thing. It can help you stay on track and not lose focus. So check these out. Check out the way they did their presentations and spreadsheets and all that stuff. And then if you have questions, need help, have trouble, be sure to reach out and be sure to do it early so that you don't lose time on this one.